This was about 10 years ago. I was still in the military back then, disciplined, grounded, but definitely not someone to cross. I also happened to be a trained EMT, which meant my home was stocked with medical supplies. I had a trauma bag. Bandages. Gauze. Saline. The whole kit. Back then, I lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood in a standalone house. Nice enough place. Big yard, decent trees, quiet street, except for the guy next door. Let's call him Greg. And Greg? Greg was a monster in khakis. From the moment I moved in, something about that house didn't sit right. Late at night, you'd hear yelling. Loud. Like you could hear it through closed windows and across the driveway loud. And then, you'd hear her crying. His wife, small, polite, soft-spoken. We'll call her Marie. Sweet woman. But something in her eyes always looked tired. Like she was constantly one argument away from flinching. I'd called the cops more than once. Domestic violence, clearly. But every time? Nothing came of it. Just a visit. A shrug. Then the yelling continued the next night. Apparently, Greg was a local mortician. Knew a bunch of cops. Ran in those circles. So the reports? They disappeared like bodies into his prep room. Then one day, Marie knocked on my door. She had a busted lip. A deep purple bruise wrapping around her upper arm. And a gash on her calf, still bleeding through her leggings. You need help, I told her. And she just nodded. That night, I let her crash on my couch. Cleaned up her cuts, patched the leg wound, and told her she didn't have to go back if she didn't want to. But she insisted. He'll come looking if I stay gone. That wasn't the last time. Over the following months, she'd come over every few weeks, new bruises, new excuses. Always scared. Always sure that if she went to the cops, it'd backfire. And honestly, she wasn't wrong. Greg had friends in all the wrong places. But apparently, helping her pissed him off. Because one day, Greg decided to fight dirty. He filed a police report, said I threatened him with a gun. And next thing I know, a sheriff's deputy shows up at my door with a restraining order and a thinly veiled smirk. You need to vacate within the week. My blood boiled. I hadn't even owned a gun for a month. I sold mine. Legally. To a cop. Turns out, that was the break I needed. My girlfriend at the time was friends with a local social worker, who was dating the very cop I sold the pistol to. You want to talk about timing? Turning point is that. I called him up. Explained everything. He asked for a photo of the gun, the one Greg said I threatened him with. I sent it over. And then he did something genius. He printed out a photo of the gun, taped a ruler next to it like it was police evidence, and walked right up to Greg's house. Is this the gun he pointed at you? He asked. Greg nodded. Yep. That's the one. Are you sure this was the date? Absolutely, Greg said. Great, the officer replied, pulling out a citation. Because this gun was sold to me a month before that day. Which means you just filed a false police report. Boom. Restraining order? Voided. Ticket? Issued. And Greg? Oh, he was pissed. Next time I was outside, he muttered threats loud enough for me to hear. Nothing he could be arrested for, but enough to let me know he was fuming. But I wasn't scared anymore. Because that's when I realized something. I wasn't staying in that town. My time in the Air Force was up. I had my discharge papers and a ticket home. I was packing anyway. So if Greg wanted a fight, he was about to get a war he'd never see coming. I waited until my last week there. And then? I bought one simple thing. A stalk of bamboo. Now if you know anything about bamboo, you know this, it's damn near impossible to get rid of once it's taken root. It spreads underground. Invades your yard like a virus. and unless you're willing to dig up half your property and burn the roots, you're stuck with it. So I took that bamboo stalk, cut it into dozens of 4-inch segments, and used a rubber mallet to drive them randomly across Greg's backyard. No pattern. No symmetry. Just chaos. Each one, a future headache. Each one, a small, silent screw you. But I wasn't done. Marie? I convinced her to let me drive her to a women's shelter 3 towns over. Gave her everything she needed to start fresh. Contacts. Documents. Advice. And a safe place to sleep. I watched her disappear into safety. And I smiled. Because for once, I knew Greg wasn't getting away with it.